special urgency. We have 2 matters of special decisions that were made. You'll find them on page 4 initially of the main agenda, and then on the addendum, item 8 addendum on that item. And I purely for noting purposes. Sorry, Councillor Condrical.
Mr Mayor, in noting those special urgency things, the first one, the housing complaints policy, was clearly a predictable thing brought in by government law. So I am confused about why it's special urgency and why we didn't know it was coming. The government haven't just sprung this on us. We knew we were going to have a requirement for housing providers to have a complaints policy. So can someone actually explain in the debate or in noting this why we didn't see this one coming? Thank you.
Can you answer that one, Brent, please?
I'm going to attempt to, Mr Mayor. You see the volume of work that was required to complete that and the timeliness of the actual information coming through from the regulator of social housing to determine exactly what the process for complaints needed to be meant that it needed to be, I need to take an early decision to put it in place. So whilst it's quite right, we were told that new system would come into being, the actual detail of what was required was not as timely as it might have been.
Thank you, Brent. Councillor Collins, again, supplementary?
Well, just a quick point on that. Surely things go in the forward plan when you know about it. So I agree that you didn't get the report finished in time, but it's still strange that these things become special urgency when, as soon as the government says they're having a new policy, surely it should go on our forward plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If you would please, Brent.
Just to clarify, you need to know what you have to do to be able to do it. And if you're not told what you have to do in a timely fashion, you're playing catch up to do that. And that was what the issue was.
Thank you for that, Brent. Moving forward, item number 9, report from Cabinet. Again, on the addendum 2, page 2, we have a report from the Cabinet. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As ever, I am happy to present the report to Cabinet and from Cabinet to full Council, and just give some potted highlights of the last couple of meetings. So, I'm really pleased actually we managed to be able to progress the Bedworth Physical Activity Club. I know it keeps getting called the Physical Activity Club. I still think of it as a leisure centre, but we are actually moving forward with that. The preparatory works are starting, and this helped us take it that next step further, and it will be moving forward quite swiftly over the coming months. So residents in Bedworth will actually be able to see levelling up in action and what a Conservative administration does for it in action. We have also had the street renaming, which has enabled us to go ahead, and I'm sure Councillor Kvetovic will be extremely happy with this, about honouring Louis Carter, who was one of our fallen heroes from Nuneaton, just as we did with Sergeant Simon Valentine, and in likewise fashion we are doing the same for him. And then we have the fact that we're doing the Creative Explorers update, that we are actually doing direct targeted intervention with the communities who are most disadvantaged with art and leisure, and that is progressing. And of course we have the Borough Plan Review, which we'll be considering later, and the Bedworth Town Deal Board, where we had to take that as an urgent decision because it wasn't expected. We couldn't put it on the forward plan. It was an announcement in the Chancellor's budget, and in order to ensure that we could receive the DOSH as quickly as possible and get on with it, we took it as an urgent item so that we could actually begin the work which we needed to do. Whilst it is a smaller item, I think it is still significant. We have the suicide prevention update, which to me is particularly important because we know that in this part of the county there is a higher prevalence of suicide, particularly in young males. Every suicide is a suicide too many, and whatever we can do to try and prevent that in our communities, I think is worthwhile and sterling work that this council does. Unfortunately, as I said at Cabinet, and it is true, one of the most saddening aspects of the role of leader of the council is being rung up by one of the officers to be informed that someone has taken their life on council property. and no one wants to pick up that phone call, and unfortunately I've had to do that on far too many occasions. I hope that the measures we're putting in place will at least enable our officers to spot the signs and give the support that is needed and coordinate with the agencies that are necessary to try and help someone. If we can help one person through this, then that is our job done, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any questions from the members specific to the Cabinet report? Thank you, Councillor Condor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start with the benefit of activity centre, because obviously people have seen in Bedworth what they call was some spectating for oil in the park, which is obviously starting to actually look to see how solid the ground is. Can we actually have an update from Councillor Markham about the risks to the project, particularly now we've lost the Bedworth Woodlands funding for it? You've obviously another £346,000 short on your budget, because that's Section 106 money. If the planning permission from Bedworth Woodlands to go ahead is lost as well. And obviously we don't know the exact cost until we know what the contractor the building on. So can we have an update about the cost risks and the impact of quite rightly turning down things like Bedworth Woodlands? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Condor. Councillor Markham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question. At the moment, first of all, the 106 money from the Woodlands, we didn't actually calculate that in the costings because we weren't sure whether it was going ahead of that, so there is no risk where that money is concerned. And as far as everything else goes, it is actually on track with the costings that we have already laid out.
Thank you, Councillor Markham. Councillor Condor.
My second question is for Councillor Croft. We've got on page 3 the general fund monitoring. Currently we have no accounts to see for the previous year, 2022-23, and we've got all sorts of issues in the current stuff about things not being actually in the invoices and measured. If we look both on this and the housing revenue account monitoring, there are measures in our scrutiny reports which are totally bizarre. The housing one tomorrow, we have a £4 million of cash sitting in the housing bin because all the interest debt hasn't actually yet been calculated in all the figures. So can I have Councillor Croft's update on catching up on all the delayed accounts and budget monitoring so that scrutiny committees can have a decent set of accounts when they're actually monitoring progress?
Thank you, Councillor Condor. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I think Councillor Concord has been told this, but in terms of our outstanding audit queries, that is an issue with our audit partner, who we are now leaving, or who are leaving us, because we've got a new audit partner under the procurement framework. They have essentially had other commitments around us. They were more committed to other partners, which meant there have been undue delays in our audit process for 2022-23 and 2021-22. Which we envisage 21-22 being completed in the very near future. 2022-2023 is more of a question that we're going to have to pick with the new partner when they come in. As Councillor Concord might intuit from the tone of my answer, I'm not very pleased with that partner, and we will be negotiating a fee that they will charge for us because it is not good enough that we've not had the work that we commissioned to do. Councillor Evans has just sort of said to me, and it is a very good point that I need to issue, which is that unfortunately we are not the only council in this position. There is a huge backlog of audit queries across local government in this country, and the government have put in a deadline of this autumn, at which point everything will cut off and we will have to deal with the position as we find it. The thing I would point out is that now that we have reset our budgeting and reporting, we will be able to produce sets of accounts that are considerably simpler and considerably easier for members of the public and accountability to understand, because we've abolished our old ridiculous system of recharges where bits of departments were cross-charged to all sorts of organisations, so nobody knew what the cost actually meant. They'll be much more transparent and they will be much more easy to understand. As to the As for the numbers reported for the LFPs, this is a known issue in the finance team. We're picking up with the personnel department.
Thank you, Councillor Conn. Councillor Conn, we have another question, different item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page, I think it's 4, we have a bit about market updates, exempt key decision. Obviously, the market traders have been briefed on the potential changes to the market. It's been reported in the press it's £85,000 cut to the market budget. Can Councillor Wilson actually explain to the Council why you're breaking your promises not to support the market with this massive cut, and how much of a detriment do you think the new arrangement will have on the number of stalls?
Thank you, Councillor Conn.
I was hoping Councillor Condacor would go for this because yet again, it just shows the bold-faced ineptitude of the man, that he is spreading lies and rumours that actually upset the very livelihoods of people who rely on the markets. And I can categorically say that this is not a cut to the markets. In fact, this administration has been the most market-friendly administration in the history of Nuneaton and Bedworth. I defy anyone to challenge our record on the markets and town centres, Mr. Mayor. So what we have actually done is highlight the fact that because of the rising costs that we're all facing, minimum wage going up, inflation which is causing the costs of everything to go up, we are now facing an £85,000 loss in the budget. It is costing us £85,000 to run the markets. It isn't about a cut. What we have been talking to the market traders about is a different way of actually providing the market itself. And I can tell you that every single trader around that room, when I discussed it with them, was fully on board with what we were discussing. Councillor Clark was with me as the chair of the Roland LSP to have that meeting. What this is about is working together in partnership with the market traders so that we can reduce our overheads and theirs. Because we know that our market rates are high compared to other places. We've tried to reduce them, but our budget doesn't allow us to do that. But if we can find a way to reduce our overheads by, for example, the traders self-erecting their stalls rather than us putting them up for them, if they are able to do that, then we can put in a discount, which means they save money on their market rates, and we save money by not having the wear and tear on our stalls, and we save money by not having to put the people to put the stalls up in the first place. And where there is an issue where a trader can't actually do that because of their age or an infirmity or a health issue, something like that, then they can actually purchase that service off us to erect the stall. But it will still be at a lesser rate than that which we are looking at charging at the moment. So the figures are still to be worked out, but this is in no way, absolutely no way, a closure of the market. This market has been going, as Councillor Clark proudly tells me as a former market trader, the charter is over 800 years old, coming up to this very year. I want to be the leader that ensures it carries on for the next 800 years. It's only the parties opposite that will shut it, not this administration.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Conn, you've got a different question?
A different question? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had the suicide prevention policy come to us at Cabinet the other week, I think it was last week, and it's really important work, so it's very sad that it's got such a single mention here. But does Councillor Markham have any data on how many people who commit suicide are tenants? And in terms of the poor access to the council house, with the council house being locked so much of the time, are we going to take any steps to try and enable more people who are struggling to actually talk to a human face to face?
Thanks, Councillor Conn. Councillor Glasser, if you wish to answer.
Thank you for that emotive question. I think we've all been touched by suicide with members, by the family or close friends. So as it is a very sensitive matter, I will send you a written answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glasser. Given I see no other questions regarding... Oh, sorry. Councillor Lewis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Wilson for his comments earlier on, which I very much welcome regarding Fusilier Louis Carter. It's been a long time in coming, many years in fact, and I'm delighted that it's this administration that will be delivering that memorial, that very fitting memorial, by renaming the road after Fusilier Carter. I know the Carter family, this is something they've wanted for a very long time. The Royal Regiment of Fusiliers have a proud link to this borough. They do actually have the freedom of this borough. And there is a very large Fusilier community within this borough as well. So I know that it will also mean an awful lot to them. So I thank Councillor Wilson for what this administration has done towards achieving that, because that goes to the heart of the matter of everything that we do. It is our community, and it's wonderful to see this administration putting this community first at every single opportunity. I would, however, like to ask Councillor Wilson, will we be able to get this done for Normandy Day, which is as early June?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question. I can't give a cast iron guarantee because there are procedures that have to be followed which have been rather more complicated with the Levelling Up Act. But the aim is to have it done for Normandy Day, but it is absolutely signed and sealed and delivered that it will happen. It's just when we can actually do the formal unveiling. I would like it to happen for Normandy Day, as it would be a nice tie-in, obviously. But sometimes circumstances, events do avoid events, as the old saying goes. It's not always possible, but where we can, that is the aim, and officers are aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Moving forward, item number 10, timetable for the forthcoming meetings for the next municipal year. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I will be very brief on this. This should be a nice quick item. I'm presenting the draft timetable, which will be formally approved at the annual council. We'll take any feedback under advisement. Members should note that we have in the budget looked to make some alterations to committees. They are still in the timetable, but that is of course pending the work of our friend Constitutional Review Working Party and the Audit Standards Committee to make those changes that we needed in the year. While I'm on my feet, and it is the last council of the session, I will just put on record my thanks to all the committee clerks and benefit services officers because they have done some wonderful work this year and they do support us very well. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Do I have a second for that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. I shall offer it open to any person who wishes to ask a question. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I just ask about the meeting date? It says the 22nd of January, extraordinary council civil. Which is after Sunday night.
I'll respond to my rest.
Does that satisfy your question? Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough.
There is an answer.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Condicle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm less interested than normal, because obviously I won't be a councillor after the further day. But a couple of questions. It's always strange that we have committees that never meet, like the Appeals Committee. So I hope we're actually decommissioning that committee and merging its work into like the employment committees. And the other question is, we seem to just have a single borough plan meeting on the 10th of December. Is that planned when we'll get the borough plan, or why aren't we having a meeting some point this summer to discuss the borough plan as it goes towards the hearing? Because as we've seen later paperwork, we're going to have to give various decisions, delegate the authority to our officers, and it would have been useful if the borough plan committee would have met around that time to actually maybe second check or have some input on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condicle. Councillor Smith, would you like to respond to that question first?
Yeah, I can quickly respond. The situation is fluid at the moment. We'll come to the borough plan in a later item, but we're currently waiting for the inspectorate to actually fix a date for the hearings, the examination. So there will be other borough plan committee meetings, but we can't actually fix the date until we've got some firm commitment from the inspectorate.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't intending to speak on this item, but I just want to make this brief comment about the point that's been made about the Appeals Committee. Surely it's actually a good thing if there's no business coming forward to the Appeals Committee. That committee deals with complaints from members of staff about their employment conditions, etc. So if there's no complaints from staff, surely that means that this council is a good employer, and therefore that should be considered as a good thing.
Thank you, Councillor. Point taken. Quite correctly. Do we have any other questions relating to the programme of meetings? In which case, do you wish to respond, Councillor Wilson?
It's only a brief response, seeing as I'm the chair of the Civic Commerce Subcommittee. It's just to put a placeholder in the calendar if we were to need a special honours council, if we were to bestow an aldermanship or a free from the borough on an individual or anyone else. It's because in the past few occasions we've done it, it's been difficult coordinating calendars. Whereas if we have something pre-planned in the diary, we can then work backwards if there is the desire to bestow those honours. If not, then the meeting will not go ahead. It's just there as a placeholder at the moment. I'm sure the Chief Executive's successor will be more than happy to cancel it if the need does not arise.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. In which case, I shall move that to the vote. All those accept the up-and-coming timetable as is. All in favour? Anybody against? And do we have any abstentions? That is carried as is. Thank you. Item 11. We move forward to reports from the various OSP committee chairs. I ask Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, as I say, I asked proposed the annual overview scrutiny panel meeting reports for all three of the panels. But firstly, can I just, similar to my colleagues, thank the officers for the preparation and presentation of the reports to the various committees during the last year, which have been absolutely excellent, and I thank them for their time and diligence in providing those. In addition, I'd also like to thank the Vice Chair and the members of my committee on the Business and Regeneration Committee for the efforts that have been taken over the last 12 months relating to the scrutiny of the various detailed items on the agenda we have before us tonight. In addition to that, there were two items that have already been referred to in part tonight, where they were urgent decisions that needed to be sent to Cabinet, and they took the decision after speaking with officers that they should go through. Those two items related to the operation of the market stalls and the bid, and the other one was the neat bid proposals. So I thought they should go sooner rather than later, and that was the decision that I took as chair of the committee. I did, before making the decision, agreed for them to go to Cabinet, discuss with officers any repercussions or issues that may arise, and was content with the responses I got. I would therefore, Mr. Mayor, like to move this item on all three reports, but I do note that other chairs were holding meetings also, and I would ask if any of those would like to add anything similar to my addition that I had to make to the regeneration report. So I move that, Mr. Mayor. Finally, if I may, is to thank you, because we had conflict at my last, in February, and you kindly stood in as the chair for the meeting, so thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the report.
Thank you, Councillor. No problem at all with that. Do I have a second for this? Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would like to second the motion to accept all three OSP reports. And whilst in reserving my right to speak, along with Councillor Clark's comments, I would like to pay particular tribute to members from all parties to the officers that have supported the OSP that I chair, and to the members of the public who came along on occasion and spoke so passionately about the various issues that were of interest to them. So yes, I do reserve my right to speak, but many thanks to all concerned in getting us through this beautiful year at the OSP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other councillor wishing to make comment or question relating to the OSP minutes, as it were? Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is always very useful to have OSPs. They cover a vast amount of stuff, as you can see from the 3 reports. And it is, or should be, the place where backbenchers have an impact, that have working groups to get stuff done. And I must say, I have been disappointed by the fact that we haven't actually changed anything in any of the 3 OSPs this year. If you look at the recommendations, apart from occasionally thanking people, we haven't actually done anything to actually change our borough for the better. So I do hope going forward the OSPs will be more effective. I hope that more stuff will go to the OSPs before they go to Cabinet, so we have some pre-scrutiny. There's things like a lot of the housing report, the suicide report, very good report, very interesting. But yeah, that sort of thing should be going to the OSPs, and it's not been getting through to them. The other thing I'd like to just mention is we did a council call for action. We had 2 of them this year, which is very rare, but they're really important things to get things moving when things get stalled. One was about the King's Home, and the other one was about Cleaver Gardens. And we had meetings with officers, Dawn Dawson and the chair and the vice chair had meetings about the Cleaver Gardens situation. It's great that we've got it moving forward, but I think the role of the call for action should have been put in here, because that was a kick along the process to try and get the county and the borough moving forward on this. And I say, a lot of the time we don't achieve much. I think that kick up the backside to get the county and the borough working forward was very useful. So I'm a great fan of OSPs, but I think we need to get more bang for our buck effectively. More stuff should go to the OSPs, so we actually discuss it for this cabinet and we make better decisions. We keep getting told measure twice, cut once, and actually one of the measurements should be reports should go to an OSP, the OSP should make recommendations, and should go to cabinet, or reports should go to cabinet, and then the OSP calls it in. So actually we have 2 looks, one from the administration and one from the backbenchers, and we've not been doing that well enough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Connick. Councillor Cant, would you like to respond? Or Councillor Brown? Councillor Cole.
I wasn't going to bother saying anything, but as Cleaver Gardens has been mentioned, I can categorically tell you that you didn't have anything to do with Cleaver Gardens. That was done by my team, and actually it was done quite quietly and quite diligently, and we just got on with it. So there was no pushing along, no nothing. You might want to believe that, you might want to tell people that, but it's not true. It was you had nothing to do with Cleaver Gardens. Neither did the previous incumbent of my position or anybody else. It was dealt with as an issue on my watch by my team, and they got on with it and they dealt with it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kate.
Mr. Mayor, I'm a little bit disappointed in Councillor Condicor's analysis of what OSPs have done. I mean, I've only been doing this for 2 years now, and I never expected to change the world. However, on the OSPs that I've sat on, we've managed to get the Armed Forces Covenant now as an action, which was never on it before. We've plugged gaps between OSPs on S106 and biodiversity money. We've done planning policy on mass and camouflage, which was revisited. And also tying into the armed forces again, due to questions that were asked across health OSPs, it is now becoming a more regularly reported and measured item on all the reports. And North Warwickshire has actually, Warwickshire have actually achieved £100,000 in funding towards forces, veterans, mental health. So I'm not sure what OSPs he was sitting on.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to say anything because I'm a great supporter of scrutiny panels
but there is a considerable amount of work still left on this, on the work programmes for all scrutiny panels, which is quite unusual. We usually try to bring them all to an end by the end of the year. And as for Clear Gardens, it was actually me that started it, and it was me that got it there. So it doesn't matter how many times you tell a lie, Councillor Goldby, it was me. Thank you.
Indeed, Councillor.
I can tell you that I wasn't telling a lie. You might have done work in the past, but it failed. It was my team under my watch that didn't fail. The proof is in the pudding. You didn't fix it, my team did. End of story.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. In which case, Councillor Shepherd, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I thank the scrutiny panels for all the work they've done, in particular obviously the council calls for action that's chaired to forward. I do hope there's a speedy resolution in there. I hope it's not going to come back again. That, but would I also ask that when this report is done again, that actually the round needs to be slightly bigger?
Point taken on that one. I appreciate what you're saying. It's the eyesight gets a bit more strained, doesn't it, as one gets a bit older. I think that's just an admin situation now that can be dealt with. Yes, thank you for that. In which case we shall move to the vote on that one. Unless there's anything else, sorry, Councillor Clark, sorry, apologies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, sorry. Mr Mayor, I would agree. The council call for action are important to this council, to all councillors, and they do actually achieve good things moving forward. I was pleased to work with the councillor in relation to the King's Home. It was superseded by some of the actions that the owner took, but hopefully that will now resolve itself in the shorter term rather than long term, and I would hate for it to have to come back to council again before action is taken. It is something I'm monitoring myself to ensure that hopefully some action is taken sooner rather than later, but it's not under our remit to actually demolish the premises, as we don't have that purview to do. So I will keep on top of that, Mr Mayor. As I say, not any more to add to the reports, but move as printed. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. In which case we should go to the vote. We to accept the reports as stated in the agenda. All those in favour of those reports? Thanking you. Those against? And abstentions? That is carried. Thank you. So we move forward to item number 12. Recommendations from Cabinet and other committees. I'll ask Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst it's in there, business and regeneration, it's more a tidying up exercise, I would suggest, this recommendation. So, as part of Grayson Place, we have set up a new limited company to administer the hotel, and it's standard procedure in a lot of cases to do that. But it means that the council, as the solitary share owner, needs to have a mechanism for scrutinising that committee. Now, we already have the NABCEL shareholder committee to do the work for NABCEL, but then that raises the question, what do we do for Grayson Place NBBC Limited? Do we set up another shareholder committee, or do we look at merging it into one? And it's my considered opinion that actually having two committees is a waste of time and money and effort, whereas we already have a committee that does the work for NABCEL, so let's expand its remit to look at the Grayson Place company, but also indeed any other companies which we may or may not set up in the future. So it's effectively turning it from the NABCEL shareholder committee into the shareholder committee, and also it may be an ideal place to consider the work of the Sherborne company, which we do with recycling, as we have the new single-use material recycling facility based in Coventry, which we are a 1/8 owner of, 9 or 8% share, because it's divided up on our proportion by amount of waste we put in. So instead of having 2 or 3 separate committees, to myself and Cabinet, it made eminent sense to actually just have one overall committee which scrutinises any and all companies that this council may set up. So it's just really a tidying up exercise, Mr Mayor, and I should hope it would get unanimous consent, because it is basically just making the best use of our resources. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any members wish to speak on this matter? Councillor Condor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for looking at me first. I've obviously got a lot of interest in the hotel particularly, and many years ago when the new administration came in, we were told that the Hilton Group would be running the hotel, and I kept pointing to the Stockton Hotel Company, which is owned by Stockton Municipal Council, and it now seems we're going to follow exactly that same model. And if you'd listened to me 2 years ago, you could have set up the company 2 years earlier and sorted out a lot of the arrangements, rather than this sort of last minute, oh dear, we need to set a limited company up. And it's interesting how that works, because the hotel up there cost about 16 million and was devalued to 12 million when obviously they got their figures wrong, so they've lost about 4 million on the capital value of the hotel. But the operating firm runs roughly at break even. And the reason for that is the level of the lease is set so it doesn't generate capital gains and you're not paying capital gains tax. You want roughly a zero profit for the operating company. But it's fascinating how it all works, and I think lessons would have been learnt if we'd have admitted that's how it was going to work and actually had some scrutiny and saw the good things and the bad things that happened in Stockton. I say the way they've arranged it, they've got a break-even or slightly profitable company, that's the trading company that pays capital gains tax if it not capital gains, corporation tax that makes a profit, and then the council effectively leases the hotel to the company. So that's the first thing I want to say. The hotel is running a year late. We know I asked a question in September 2021 when it was supposed to be completed late 2022, early 23. So it's running exactly a year behind where it's supposed to be. And there's obviously a massive loss in that, because we've obviously lost a year of income. And the other thing in these reports is it talks about borrowing and how the balance of £72 million, which is expected to come through council borrowing, is mentioned. I keep mentioning we need to borrow at sensible times, and I get getting told we shouldn't borrow too early. We're not allowed to borrow too early. But clearly, when we signed the contract to build a £20 million hotel, and the invoices started coming in, we should have started blending our borrowing in, so that some of our borrowing at least would have been at 2% before Liz Truss crashed the economy. We now face this £73 million being borrowed post the Truss era at 5%, which has totally wrecked all our economics. So I'm actually quite good at predicting the future. I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but one thing I do know is if the interest rates are 2%, it's a good idea to start borrowing some money at 2%, rather than risking all your eggs in assuming they'll still be 2% in 3 or 4 years' time. And it was mentioned about predicting Wilko's going on there. We have bicycles. We go into Wilko's to buy our tyres. Wilko's was devoid of stock for months and months and months before it went under, because the people delivering stock into Wilko's would no longer supply because of its credit rating. So I think we need to be smarter on these projects. I think we need to go downtown and try and shop in some of these shops, because we know when they're going to go broke, when they run out of tyres to fix your inner tube, fix your punctures. I am really annoyed that we keep making these mistakes. I was around when Woolworths was bought and we gave £1.6 million to TJUs, who then went into administration. I'm furious that we spent this money, or lost this money being trapped in a lease to Wilko's, when we knew any sensible person, read any newspaper or financial page, Wilko's would be in distress. I wish all these projects well, but we need to be more sensible. We need to think more before we do them. And to actually say we should think more is not being anti-development. The Grayson Place we're now planning on doing is very similar to the Grayson Place I would have done if I ran the council 3 years ago. It is a more modest size. It doesn't have the multi-storey car park, which was a disaster. And I hope in taking this forward, we'll actually have a public consultation meeting with the plans put out of the new Grayson Place, and we can all see if we like where the bus stops, the cycling, the car parking, and actually measure the plan against what the public thinks before we go to the architect and put planned application in. I don't want to object to the new Grayson Place design. I want it to be a design where we have buy-in. I want it to be a design where we have cycle routes, where we have a bus stop that you don't have to walk across car parks and get one over to get to the cinema. I want the disabled.
It'd be nice if the opposition you actually listened to what was being said rather than talking amongst yourselves. It's incredibly rude. They are being so rude and disrespectful. It's untrue.
Anyway, thank you. My last point, Mr. Mayor, if I may. One of the key things that went wrong with Grayson Place before was disabled access. The multi-storey car park and where the disabled ramps were meant it dumped you out to Roan Way, Ringway. So please, when you do all this project, have a look at disabled routes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crowe? Councillor? Oh, yeah. Yes? Councillor Shepherd wishes to speak. Okay. Councillor Shepherd, then, your question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have mixed views on this document, mainly because there's been no calling, there's been no scrutiny, we move forward to put in a committee company, there's been no discussion, certainly not opposition members, and as far as I'm aware. As I said, I'm divided on this because of the lack of scrutiny. Because you're saying about putting it in with an outside, you don't know how it works. It's on an outside shareholder, so the declaration is in but you're not worked out how it works, and actually to sit down and send it to scrutiny would be the way forward in terms of getting the little glitches out that we might be coming across. So I've got some concern, and I would hope that if it goes through, that you decide that, besides an outside committee, actually, it needs a little bit of buy-in from the scrutiny panel as well.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Any other questions from any other members? In which case I shall go to Councillor Crowe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a great deal to say because I've said it on other occasions, and I hope we can get through it without interruptions from the gallery. I remember back in the day, former Councillor Heatley making a few predictions on that score, and he was quite right. On the point about learning from the Stockton, Councillor Constable was very happy now we're already doing it. In fact, I think the 151 officer has had meetings with the 151 officer of Stockton, and we've consulted, and we've got what I believe the term is best practice from that quarter. Obviously, Councillor Concord is not going to be involved in those discussions because, quite frankly, Councillor Concord is not in charge of this issue. Councillor Condacord's role is to turn up here and occasionally ask some questions. Mr. Mayor, he talked about, and there's been an issue with Councillor Concord, which is, I believe the term that used to be used in politics was Captain Hindsight. And that's pretty much been Councillor Condacord's role. He cast himself as Cassandra, but really he's been Captain Hindsight. Oh, I wouldn't have done that. Well, that's not much use, Mr. Mayor. If we had done as Councillor Condaccord had just said he would have done, and proceeded with the full programme a year ago, which he's now complaining is a year behind schedule, then we really would have been in the soup financially. Because we have just spent a period of our time in office pausing the programme to manage the borrowing costs and manage the cost of the regeneration programme down, so there is no additional general fund pressure. That was the benchmark that we set. Councillor Condaccord has just said, oh, we should have done it a year ago. Well, there's no good having income if it's not offsetting the borrowing costs, so we couldn't proceed with that. That would have been ridiculous. And the same point goes for his idea of like, oh well, I would have borrowed when it was cheap. Well, Mr. Mayor, apart from the fact that just borrowing and sitting on it would have led to sort of dead interest. We've just been paying dead money on the interest. We wouldn't have had any income to offset it with. I made the point on a previous occasion. I mean, I'm not currently a homeowner, but I'm not going to take out a mortgage now just on the off chance that I find somewhere I like. And that is the kind of financial recklessness that Councillor Concourse tries to push on us after the fact. And I do point out that if he had been so good at predictions, I'm sure he could have made some money on the stock market or the lottery and saved us all this financial issue. But I didn't have much further out.
Thank you, Councillor Cobb. You wish to make a point?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. 2 points first explanation. I didn't say borrow before we need it. I said borrow as the bills came in. As in, if you're building your own house, you borrow as the builder gives you an invoice.
Thank you, Councillor. No, I'm very sorry, we passed that point. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I must remember next time I go to Asda and they run out of cheese, it must be closing down. So, we hear that a Green Council would have done this, it would have done that, it would have done the other in terms of regeneration. Well, I can tell you what a Green Council would have done. There would have been no borough plan review because they would have taken away £100,000. Fact. They would have spent £1 million on new windows for the town hall. Fact. And their borrowing, or proposed borrowing, would have resulted in our Section 151 officer issuing a Section 114 notice, i.e. bankruptcy. So I'll take no lessons from Councillor Condacor on sound financial management. Where it comes to Councillor Shepherd's point, we have a company which is doing relatively well in NABSEL, so we have a template to follow, which is exactly what we have been doing throughout this process. Now, I'm long in the tooth here enough to know that when NABSEL was set up, there was no scrutiny. Myself as the Deputy Leader of the Opposition and the late Councillor O'Brien as Leader of the Opposition were not consulted on setting up of NABSEL. We were presented with a report to Cabinet, it then came here, and that was it. We were fortunate enough to have a seat on the board, which is exactly what we have offered to the Opposition. That was the instruction I gave to officers. As far as I'm aware, that has been taken up. So there is that, hopefully, cross-party buy-in. So we have followed exactly what the party opposite did when they were in control. And now it does feel a bit like crying wolf, Mr. Mayor. We have done everything by the book, by the precedent which was set here. We're doing all right with NABSEL, and this is a way of actually following the good practice that the council has established. And so by just tying up the two shareholder committees into one as a shareholder committee overall for any and all companies that we set up, I just think that is plain, sensible, lean management. And I don't see actually why it needs to be opposed. It's just good housekeeping. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. In which case I move that forward to the vote. All those in favour of the proposal? Thank you for that. Anybody against?
We've got my vote, Mr. Mayor.
We will do, yes indeed. I'm assuming there's no abstentions on that basis, in which case that is carried. So we move forward to item 12B, which is the review of the borough plan, examination in public. I have on Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The borough plan review was submitted to the Secretary of State and the Planning Inspectorate for examination on the 12th of February. So after 3 years of very hard work, we're now in the final stage of the review process. 2 inspectors have been allocated to the borough plan review, and officers are working with them at the moment through an independent programme officer to arrange an examination in public in the coming months, hopefully as early as July. Some modifications have already been suggested by the Council to the documents following the responses from the publication consultation which we held last year. It will be up to inspectors to consider these suggested modifications and to recommend any further ones that they feel are necessary in order to make the plan sound and legally compliant. The Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act specifically requires that inspectors are allowed to require any modifications they deem fit during the examination process. So this council must therefore give consent to the inspectors for them to provide modifications and to allow officers to agree to these modifications during that examination process. Without this facility, the inspectors could consider the plan unsound at the outset. The recommendation is therefore as set out in the report, so that the inspectors are requested to recommend any modifications they deem necessary, and secondly, that these modifications can be agreed with the planning inspectors during the examination, using delegated powers by officers in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning. Any agreed main modifications will then need to be consulted on by the council, and any responses will have to be fed back to the inspectors. That's all part of the process. Subject to the inspectors considering the plan is sound and legally compliant, the plan can then be adopted by the council. So I move the recommendation as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do I have a second to that recommendation?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Do I have any member wishing to speak on the matter? Councillor Conrical.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is the final item of my final full council, so it will be interesting in this borough plan. We have a borough plan. It is based on far too high a housing target, and the party opposite said they were going to submit a plan in February 2023, i.e. a year earlier. If that had been 6 months late, that would have still been a useful plan, because the 3 planning inquiries we're currently fighting around Wellington and St Nicholas, and the one you might be fighting for Bedford Woodlands, would have had the advantage of that plan being adopted by now. If instead that plan is as late as it is today, it will come after these 3 planning inquiries in Wellington and St Nicholas, and may very well come too late to save the Bedford Woodlands. My very point when we were talking at the budget over a year ago, and at the borough plan meeting even before that, is we either do a plan quickly and fast to give us some protection, or we do it well. The current halfway house of doing a bit better plan in a moderate amount of time means we've spent all this money, but it hasn't protected all the sites in Dorkington, all the sites in Wellington, the sites in St Nicholas and Bedford Woodlands. It's too slow to do the protection job, but actually not good enough to get the infrastructure you keep saying we should have. And we clearly do need. I'm passionate about getting better infrastructure for Wellington. I want there to be the Wellington entrance to the railway station. I'm passionate about getting Stocking Ford station opened, so actually the west of the Nuneaton has the benefit of better connectivity. There's so much we could put in a plan if we had a carefully designed greener plan, more solar panels, more dealing with the issues of sewage, flooding, drainage, those flood alleviation projects you say are too expensive. Having done the plan more carefully and with more expertise, we could have got developers to pay for some of the flood mitigation. So it was a halfway house, a 2-2 borough plan, and it was too slow to be useful and not really good enough to actually be useful either. The final thing I would really like to say is we need to be honest with figures. I've always published my figures, I've done projections. I did work out the Coventry population statistics was wrong, and I was right and ONS was wrong. But now we have leaflets going around saying the Conservatives are going to want to build less than 450 houses a year. Councillor Smith is putting forward a plan for 560. So that's 20% more than what's in your leaflets. And then the planning inspector and the developers will try and come to a figure which may be back to 702. Yeah? Planning process means you're giving delegated authority to the planning inspector and the officers to effectively negotiate the next borough plan. And like with the previous borough plan, things get put back in. So I'm very concerned about us giving delegated authority without that check and balance. And that's why, Councillor Smith, I asked about, will there be a borough plan meeting around that time, and I'm pleased you said there will be, because there does need to be some member buy-in to the changes our officers might need to make. I really had a hard time in this chamber. I'm dreadfully, I'm probably aspergic or high-functioning autistic, because I love numbers. I do get things right, and I passionately like getting projections right. I've been here for 12 years, and if you look back at the videos, I've not been too bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Connaughton. Councillor Rob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to do my usual thing of having to correct the nonsense of the previous speaker and how wrong all of that was. I'll leave that to my colleague and portfolio holder, Councillor Smith. What I would like to say, Mr. Mayor, is this could not be more apt. The last item on this council, the last item I will speak on as a councillor, is the first thing that got me involved in local politics, and that is the borough plan. And across the whole borough, and I think the borough plan is such a big issue, it speaks to what local authorities are about, because it's far more than just council members. And I think it's fair to say that when I became involved in local politics, and a lot of my colleagues did, it was because of the unfairness that the public was feeling and being very clear about with the original borough plan, the one that the controlling Labour group at the time brought forward. It totally disregarded the wishes of residents. It was not sound in any way. The inspector labelled it, or the inspection was labelled as third rate, and rightly so. It inflicted a huge amount of pain on certain areas, my own St Nicholas, Wellington, needlessly. It wasn't fair or reasonable in any way, and that drove me and others here to get into local politics to fix this. So how grateful am I now that we have a sound borough plan that has exhaustive evidence that's been brought forward to support it. Not just the housing numbers, but everything that goes with that. A borough plan is about planning in its entirety. For one example, not just the regeneration of town centres, but the employment. Pointless building thousands more houses if you're not going to deliver any jobs locally, because then everybody would have to travel and we just become an even bigger dormitory, town or towns. We don't want that. So I'm delighted that this borough plan has more than twice the employment land in it that the previous one did, and less houses. So we're getting the balance right. It's being sorted out. There's proper regard for infrastructure, something that's been so missing in Wellington. I know some of that is a county function and whatever, but we had an abject failure for the 8 years before I was the county councillor, talking about bus stops that actually I'm paying to have delivered this week. A whole bunch of those things weren't included. And so now we have proper infrastructure plans. We even have design layout plans for new estates. The plan is so much better, more detailed, more robust, sound, and much more importantly, fair for the residents of the borough. It's taken people's views into account. We've had so many consultations, and then we had a further one, as I'm sure Councillor Smith will refer to. And I turned up to those and listened to what people said, and we talked about it in the borough plan meetings, and we made sure that that was included. It's sound, it's evidence-based, it's completely turned it around, and contrary to what was said before, it has legal weight under the planning. Although it's not fully adopted, it is a finalised borough plan, and that has formed part of our case for the appeals that we face in Wellington and other areas. A borough that doesn't have proper control of its planning and lets things drift and decline is what we had before. Regeneration, a proper borough plan, proper regard for making the 106 money really work, and we've heard of all of the good work that's been done to improve the open spaces and the parks. The best job and the biggest spend that we've done in 30 years. All of that's become possible because we've changed from an attitude of decline to a new group that controls the borough, of one of regeneration, improvement, soundness, evidence-based, not half-baked stuff, not decline, but really positive stuff going forward. and the electorate bought into that. So I'm pleased that as I am ending my career on the borough, and won't be standing here for the borough, although I'm going to carry on public service representing on the county and the county at Westminster Combined Authority, I am pleased that we have made this huge step, the biggest single thing in local politics, and got a new borough plan, got it right, and I commend all of the officers and all of the people that contributed in a positive way to that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Trump. Councillor Evans. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The borough plan and the Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The borough plan and the devastating policies within it imposed by the previous Labour administration have been an issue of great contention during my 6-year term on this council. Residents should never forget the words of the barrister hired to defend the crazy borough plan after it was referred to as being a third-rate plan having been based upon flawed ONS statistics. The actions and work of the Labour group can only be described as shoddy. Secret deals with Coventry City Council behind closed doors to surrender Bedworth's Greenbelt, public consultation that could at best be described as limited, and a complete dereliction of their duties. We know the decision to include the Bedworth Woodlands within the borough plan was a political decision taken behind closed doors. A decision not based upon sound evidence, rather a decision to shore up the Labour vote in their marginal wards. I welcome the report this evening presented to the Council, which highlights the real difference between having a Conservative Council which has had just 3 years in office to a Labour Council which was in charge for 45 years and achieved absolutely diddly squat. The Conservative administration promised the people of Bedworth that the borough plan would be reviewed on day one in taking office. That is exactly what we achieved, and that is why the borough plan is now sitting before the planning inspectorate. And to those who say that the process has taken too long, I say you may well have a point, but let's just remember this. The planning inspectorate at the last inspection, under the Labour Council, made it clear that the borough plan had to be reviewed immediately upon being ratified by councillors. Labour sat on their hands, wasted time, and that is what drove the delay, which my good friend Councillor Smith has struggled to navigate. And so I welcome the report that has been presented to full council this evening, and I hope that members will support it. As these will be my final remarks in this chamber, having served the people of the Slough Ward for 6 years, I'd like to place on record my sincere thanks to the constituents for the support they have given me during my term in office. I've enjoyed endless ward surgeries, coffee mornings, as well as dealing with hundreds of pieces of casework. I also want to pass on my thanks to the officers on this council for the often unrecognised behind work stuff that they are doing here. In particular, I'd like to specifically say thank you to Kevin Hollis and Katie Boyce for their professional advice during my tenure as a Cabinet member. Working alongside them to secure £15 million for Bedworth and the Levelling Up Fund was probably the highlight of my councillor career, and I think the three of us achieved great things for Bedworth. Sometimes the Neaton and Bedworth Conservative group has felt like a second family, and it has been a real honour to work alongside such brilliant colleagues. I wish all of my councillor colleagues, regardless of political affiliation, all the best in the future, and I hope that the residents of the Slough Ward will get behind Councillor Markham and Councillor Walsh on the 2nd of May.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gentleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, we've heard quite a lot tonight. Firstly, I'm going to say is, Councillor Concord, if you could tell me Saturday's lottery numbers, I would really appreciate it. Actually, you seem to know every other set of future numbers, so any hints and tips, greatly. Just send me an email, okay? Don't share them in public. Much appreciated. I do have to challenge some of what you said. First of all, you talk about the numbers, and you talk about sort of the ONS numbers. I believe it was Mel Gehring who, obviously one of your Green colleagues, who actually came up, because I was sat here when he delivered the presentation to the planning inspector for stage 1 hearing. So I was sat pretty much where you're sat right now, listening to that. So I think, you know, taking credit for the work that he did there is slightly bad form. I would also say, in terms of the immediate review. It didn't happen. We didn't get an immediate review. So again, I was sat in a public gallery at the time, and again, the thing that got me into local politics was opposing the borough plan. And I was sat there on the night when it was sort of put out there, and we had counter proposals put forward about the wording of the review. And we sort of put it forward, and then had to wait 14 months of that review process to actually begin. 14 months. So we could technically be 14 months further down the line than we are now if it had started 14 months earlier. Even if it started 6 or 7 months earlier. When we did start that review, though, I believe most of the meetings, I think it was only 3 or 4 meetings that happened, and they were mainly focused on the traveller site issue, and even then nothing was resolved. So I have to give full credit to Councillor Smith and the team under his sort of leadership as portfolio holder, the sterling work they've done. Now, I have been a critic of this. I have sort of said that what we need is something equivalent to a Land Rover, something that's robust and reliable, but with a very quick build time, or a fairly quick build time. What we've ended up with is a Rolls Royce. Okay, a watertight, solid, dependable plan that goes above and beyond, and that will see this borough through over the coming sort of decade and beyond. So that's what we've ended up with. Yes, I would have liked it to have been a few months quicker in getting it, and I would say the voting record would probably show that I did vote sort of against it sometimes because I wanted it through quicker. But the end product we've ended up with is excellent. And if we're going to talk about where the blame lies, it's in the procrastination that we had from the previous administration in not getting this off the ground sooner. And if they'd have worked with all the parties, if they'd have listened and worked with the residents and local MPs, we might not be where we are today, and we might not be having to sort of face the challenges that we've got lined up ahead of us over the next few months. But I am pretty certain that what we have produced will stand up, and it will stand up to the rigour of inspection. Okay, as I say, time will tell whether it does or doesn't, and I really think we have got a product that will take forward. So I'd like to thank you, Councillor Smith, again, as you can pass the thanks on to your team as well. So it's good to see that we have delivered it. Normally you might expect a council to have like a 4-year term, a 2-year or a 4-year term. We've been in the position of having a 3-year term. Okay, and to achieve it in that time, I'm pretty pleased overall with what's happened, and I hope that we will still save a number of sites. I hope they will still be saved and that they will not be built upon. And last night, planning, which I know Councillor Condacor was there for, will sort of bear us out on that one, okay, because that will be the test case that comes forward. We will see what we will see from that. But well done, and I think I'm very happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It feels a bit like deja vu, really, with Councillor Condacor. I mean, he was first elected 12 years ago for the Wellington ward on a pledge to stop the building on the fields in Wellington, and not one single solitary brick has been stopped. It's only the Conservative administration that is getting anywhere near stopping the unnecessary bricks being laid in the green fields of Nuneaton and Bedworth. Now, Councillor Condacor is right. He has the right diagnosis, but the wrong the right symptom, but the wrong diagnosis. It is slightly late, but that is because we have had 2 big obstacles in our way as a Conservative administration. The first was the Labour administration did, to coin Councillor Evans' phrase, diddly squat. There was nothing virtually when we took control of this administration to get anywhere near a review of the borough plan. Councillor Smith effectively picked that up from a standing start. We had to go full pelt, and full pelt we did. But the other reason is that of all the evidence we have to put towards the inspector, and there are mountains and mountains of evidence that we have to put to the inspector to prove that the plan is legally sound under the Act, which it's actually a Labour, an old Labour Act of Parliament that we're having to work with here for local plans. Reams and reams of paper. Where do these reams and reams of paper come from? They come from experts. What do experts cost? They cost money. And what did Councillor Concord propose to revoke from the Green Budget in 2022? The money. So without that money, we would have got nowhere. If Councillor Concord had his way, there would be none of these policies being refreshed and updated because there'd be no money to pay for them. Now, that means that we'd have been stuck with the Labour third-rate plan. And he has stood here many a time and said, no, we need to change that. You can't have it both ways, Mr. Mayor. It's just mind-boggling that people go out there and try and peddle this to the residents, and they say one thing and actually do another. But we got those reports done. We are now in a position to put up a robust and solid argument about our review. And that's what matters with the inspector. Do I wish he had got there sooner? Of course I do. But I have dealt with the hand I was played, and so has Councillor Smith. And if this was a game of poker, he'd have been winning, Mr. Mayor, because actually he's playing the blinder with this review. Now, we are the only administration in this council's history to actually stand up for the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth against unwanted, unnecessary, and quite frankly, crazy development that has been proposed, which would literally take the housing right up to the border of the A5 on Weddington, and then also with the Longshoot and others, 1,800 houses. We have set aside, thanks to Councillor Croft's sterling financial stewardship, £250,000 to meet the potential costs of those appeals. Not because we want to fight them, but because we have to fight them for the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. And I can categorically assure the residents that we will be going for costs. If we win, Mr. Mayor, the instruction from us as the Cabinet members to the officers and to the King's Council is crystal clear. If the developers lose, they have made us go through all of this, they pay for it, not the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. That, of course, is a decision for the inspector, but every other occasion in this council's history, we've rolled over, let the developer tickle our tummy, and we pay for it. No longer under this administration. Now, this plan that we're taking through tonight improves greatly on the situation that we inherited 3 years ago. It actually protects residents who didn't have any protection, and that is what happened last night at the Woodlands planning application, because, in my view, and I believe it is the view of the other members, of course, they each have their own reasons for voting, but my reason primarily was that the existing borough plan, as passed by Labour, and 2 of the Cabinet members are sat there tonight, Mr. Mayor, who actually pushed it through, their report is dangerously out of date and puts us further at risk. And it's only because ours is up to date with the relevant evidence that I believe we have a defendable argument before the planning inspector to try and save the woodlands. Whitestone Golf Drive has been sacrificed to Coventry's Labour administration. Catherine Morton, the old head of planning, said that it was only put in because we have now accepted Coventry's overspill. And other places, Bulkington for example, I know specifically that sites in there were put in just because of the Coventry overspill. Hawkesbury put in as well. But it is only the Conservatives that can be trusted with the future of this borough, Mr. Mayor, or we go back to the future with the Labour Party that sacrificed it before.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my colleagues have done a pretty good job in rebutting some of the criticism. I think we'd all like to have seen this borough plan come forward in much quicker time. We started off with an ambitious timetable. It would have been great to meet it. Unfortunately, the rest of the world didn't move as quick. There were delays with the sub-regional headman. We could do nothing until we got that. But because all of our neighbouring local authorities were sitting on their hands a little bit, it was delay after delay, and we couldn't move forward without that data. I think the team have done an amazing job to deliver this in 3 years, given the circumstances. And I'm very proud of the plan. It's a solid plan. We've updated 15 major out-of-date policies. And I say they are major policies, but were out of date already when we took over. House numbers. Currently we're having to deliver something like between 800 and 900 houses a year because of early slippage. That's being cut to 545 a year. That will significantly improve our situation in terms of 5-year land supply, which is something that we've come in great criticism for, and that's all down to Labour's failed borough plan. There's no Coventry overspill in our plan. Our plan is for us, it's not for Coventry, it's for this borough. There's no green belt in the plan. Brownfield first is our policy. So there's no more green belt. Swathes of it were cut by the Labour plan. There's nothing in ours. We've managed, hopefully, to save 2 sites. That's all we can do, is save 2 sites. The Woodlands, as you've already heard, was reviewed last night. I'm hopeful that that site and the remaining site in Bolton will be saved when this plan is adopted. And we've had criticism that this plan doesn't carry weight. Well, I rebuke that. I've listened in the last 3 weeks to our King's Council successfully defending the emerging plan. It does carry weight, and he's made a good point of prematurity of the recent appeal. Prematurity in the sense that these 1,900 houses that have come forward, speculative developments by 3 different developers, really have come forward to try and beat this borough plan process. But we've solidly defended it, the prematurity argument, on the basis that we do have a plan coming forward. It is accepted at a very advanced stage. It is with the inspectorate, and it does carry weight. When this plan is adopted, we will have a sound 5-year housing land supply that will be defended. We've also doubled the employment land, I think nearly doubled it. The sub-regional headman called for something just over 40 hectares of employment land. We're putting in 80 hectares of employment land to create the jobs, to boost the economy, and create jobs for the people that are going to live in these new houses. So I'm very proud of the plan we've got. I thank my colleagues for all the positive comments, and yeah, I recommend the motion as printed.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So at that point, I shall move that to the vote. All those in favour of the report as written? Thank you. All those against? We will indeed, Councillor Condicott, and any abstentions?
Could you record my vote?
We will indeed, Councillor Evans. Thank you very much indeed. In which case that is carried.